Hi, this is the Parent Life Show, and I'm Katrina Ball, your host. And today we're going to be talking about Let's Talk About Sex, specifically how parents can talk to their children about sex. Our guests today are Janaea Painter, a counselor at the Family Center, Alicia Huttick, a sex educator. We went out to the Department of Health, where we spoke with Deborah Oriole, a school and community nurse, on STIs. This is what she had to say.
Okay. The most common STI seen among Bermuda's youth is chlamydia by far, along with gonorrhea, along with HPV, the human papillomavirus. But I want to talk about chlamydia in particular. That seems to be what I'm seeing and what my colleagues are seeing the most at the clinic. I mean, let's be honest. You know, kids are out there, they're experimenting, and they're vulnerable. So yes, pregnancy is easier to talk about, and certainly I guess the guys don't even worry about that at all. They're more or less putting that on the female to worry about. The other thing I want to mention along with that is the fact that a lot of females will say that I'm not having sex, but I'm having oral sex. Okay, and they don't necessarily think that that's sex. So I think I want to get that message out there. Sex is sex, whether you're having it orally, anally, or vaginally. Sex is sex. So just because you're not having penetrating vaginal sex, just know that you can be vulnerable to any of the STIs that you get in the vaginal area, in your mouth, or in the anal area. To me, one case of chlamydia or any other STI is one too many.
Welcome, Janaea and Alicia.
Thank you for having us.
Janaea, why do you think it's so important to talk to your kids about sex?
Well, really the reality, Katrina, is that when we have kids, we think, oh, they're such cute little babies, and we have all these wishes and hopes and desires for them. And then they grow up and they go through that stage of adolescence, and they're awkward and they're growing to be adults. And when you think about adulthood, part of adulthood is being able to have healthy relationships with other people, and sex is a part of that. So it's important for parents to, as part of their role as parenting and bringing children up, is to give them the right information about sex, as that's going to be a part of who they develop into as they grow older.
And Alicia, what's your thoughts?
Well, absolutely, to what Janaea says. You know, in terms of the information that adolescents are getting, unfortunately, a lot of it is coming from the media, from different peer groups, and it's often inaccurate. What that does is it puts children at increased risk. So by going in and providing them with information, be it from a parent, be it from, you know, a sex educator, we can in turn, or they can in turn, go out and make informed choices and decisions. When we talk about kind of sex and sex education, that kind of thing, it's important to note that it's not just the physical act that we're talking about. You know, it's not just kind of penis and vagina, but you're talking about things like communication skills, decision-making skills, which can really be applied to different aspects of life. And I think as well, you know, there's that common thought that, well, if you talk about it, they're going to go out and have sex more frequently, when research has shown that actually people who are starting to have conversations with their children at younger ages, those children are more likely to delay the onset of sexual behavior.
And speaking about that, what is the most appropriate age to start talking about sex?
You know, it should be an ongoing conversation. You know, when they are little, they should know they should use the correct words. You know, they should know that this is a penis, this is a vagina. You know, when they're going through puberty and we're finding that that's younger and younger, they need to understand that these are changes that are happening in the body, because it can be scary if you don't know, you know. Why am I feeling this way? What's going on with me? So it needs to be an ongoing conversation from the time they're little.
And as a sex educator, you go into some of the schools. What are some of the common sex myths that you hear?
Oh, there's many. Probably the one I hear most frequently, though, is if I drink orange soda or Mountain Dew, it reduces my sperm count and I will not get anyone pregnant. This is the most common myth that I hear out there. It couldn't be further from the truth. Chances are it may give you diabetes, but it's not going to reduce your sperm count. Another one I hear a lot of is this whole thing of blue waffle. It was this internet sensation that kind of took over, and all these kids think it's some sexually transmitted infection. It is not. It's just a really gory picture that was put on the internet.
So before you go on,
Yep.
for parents that may have no clue what you just even said, can you break that down?
Yep, absolutely. So the blue waffle, basically, it is a picture of a vagina that was posted on the internet by someone, and they used some blue dye, and they've made it look blue. And so it was thought that, oh, this is something that you can get from having sex. So another one I hear a lot of is that if I'm still a virgin if I have oral or anal sex. There are different definitions of virginity, but certainly, you know, there's also certain risks that are involved, particularly with anal sex. Another one I hear a lot of is if I use 2 condoms, it's better than one condom. Again, couldn't be further from the truth. You put yourself at just as much risk if you're not using a condom, if you're using 2, because you know the chances of breakage is that much higher. Saran wrap is also not an acceptable form of contraception either. So, yeah,
Definitely not. How can parents find out about these myths that their children are hearing, and I guess debunk them?
I mean, absolutely. I think that's often a challenge. You know, it's going to be tough for a child to actually bring that conversation up with their parent. You know, hey, I heard this or heard that. But you know, it's going on the internet, educating yourself, you know, understanding what's going on in terms of sexuality, what's going on locally as well as internationally, as a parent. And there's tons of resources, there's tons of websites where parents can get really valuable information.
What holds parents back from talking to their children openly about sex, Janae?
I think that it comes from our own upbringing, in the sense that sometimes when you reflect on what your experience is in learning about sex, it might affect the way that you want to talk or you do talk to your children about it. And it can sometimes create a cycle of, we were taught that sex is a dirty thing and we're ashamed of it. And then when your child brings it up, you don't know how to deal with it. You don't know, you might have your own issues in your past around your own sexuality, and so it makes it uncomfortable. And so sometimes even adults, we have to look at that and say, okay, where does that come from? Maybe adults might need extra support, and there are lots of places in the community where you can go to get extra support if, when your child brings up questions, it's very uncomfortable for you, and it might breed some of that feelings of like insecurity or anxiety. Yeah, it's important to go and get that kind of support.
And children are very intuitive nowadays. You know, they can really pick up on, if you're feeling insecure about that, and then, whether they choose to open up, to you, or if you come off as, don't talk to me about something like that, so you really have to be open as a person. How can parents bring up the sex talk without it being awkward or turning their child off?
Well, one of the things that we talk about in our Let's Talk About Sex workshop is using teachable moments to really bring up the conversation of sex. There's a very common myth, I think, in our society, and it's very much perpetuated by the media, that you have to sit down with your child and have this big one-time talk about the birds and the bees, and that's really not true. And one thing that we tell parents is what's actually more comfortable and actually probably a better idea is to use the moments that come up. If there's a song on the radio, if they're sitting and watching a movie together and the conversation comes up about, or there's a topic in the movie that's sexually related, that's a good time to start talking to them. Okay, what do you think about this? What do you think about what happened in the movie? How is it related to what your friends would say about sex or or something like that. That's really where you want to what you want to capitalize on are those moments, those short moments in time that you have with your children to really talk about what's on their minds and what they're being exposed to through media, through their friends at school and that kind of thing, yeah.
Alicia, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Teachable moments. Brilliant idea. You know, I certainly encourage all parents to use those. Other things that you want to look at, you know, making sure you're non-judgmental. If your child is bringing something that's, you know, kind of personal up to you, and you shut them down immediately, or you know, yell at them, or try and discipline in a way, chances are they're going to shut down immediately, and any hope of future conversations just aren't going to happen. You know, I think as well, you can express to your child, hey, you know, this may be a little bit uncomfortable for me, and it may be uncomfortable for you. I get that. I understand that. You know, the use of humor can kind of go a long way with that. You know, sticking to the facts rather than using it as a fact-finding mission. You know, if you as the parent are comfortable sharing some of your personal experiences, absolutely fine. But you're not asking your child, you know, what their sexual experiences have been, what their friends' sexual experiences have been, because again, that's likely to shut that conversation down. And just being respectful of each other, you know, respect the fact that as a parent and child or guardian and child, you may have differing views, you may have differing beliefs and opinions, and that's okay. You know, express those, but, you know, be okay that there may not be agreement on those.
Now, is there any advice that you two may have for, say, this single parent who, you know, has a child of the opposite sex, so a mom who has a son or a dad who has a daughter? How do they bring up those conversations appropriately?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, be it a single parent, be it, you know, a father talking to a daughter, or a mother talking to their son, you know, it's comfort with the topic that you're talking about. You know, it's no different coming from a mother than it is a father, regardless of the gender of your child. If you know the information, if you're using things like teachable moments and everything, you're going to have a successful conversation with your child.
And just remembering that this conversation is one of a number of conversations that you're going to have with your children, and it really kind of hinges on the relationship that you have with your child outside of a big conversation such as that talking about sex or talking about drugs or talking about whatever it is. You're really capitalizing on the relationship that you have with your child.
So no marathon talks.
No.
Ongoing conversation.
What are your thoughts on scare tactics from the young person's viewpoint?
Okay. Okay. Well, here you go. If you tell someone no, 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 they're more likely going to do yes, 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 yes. Scare tactics, when we're talking about scare tactics in sexual education, we often think about kind of the gory pictures that they show of sexually transmitted infections and everything. Yes, they elicit a strong reaction, but in terms of really changing behavior, it doesn't have an effect on that. All it does is it paints sex in a negative way. Our role as parents, as educators, as counselors, is to shape sex as a sex positive. You know, sex can be a good thing. You know, if kind of these criteria are met, it's a way of expressing love, it's a way of expressing mutual respect, all those kinds of things. But, you know, we have this tendency to focus on the negative. You know, if you have sex, your penis is going to drop off. Those kinds of thoughts. So then they carry that with them for the rest of their lives, and that can obviously have detrimental effects for future relationships.
I've really enjoyed our conversation, and this is great information for parents needing to talk to their adolescents about sex. But we need to take a short break. So when we return, we will continue with both Janaea Painter and Alicia Huttick. Thank you. Stay tuned. Welcome back. This is a Parent Life Show. I am Katrina Ball, your host, and we are talking with Janaea Painter, a counselor from the Family Center, and Alicia Huttick, a sex educator. On the show topic, let's talk about sex, specifically how parents can talk to their adolescents about sex. Alicia, Can you usually tell apart in your class those who have had sex from those who haven't?
Interestingly enough, yes. Generally, there seems to be a bit of a gender difference. It seems to be easier to tell with girls actually than boys. The girls that are sexually active tend to kind of be disengaged, a little disinterested in the conversation. Whereas the boys, it's hard to know sometimes because there's that whole kind of sense of male bravado and, you know, I've got to act this certain way and pretend that, you know, I'm a pimp and I get lots of this and everything. But you can definitely tell.
Janaea, what are some of these physiological changes that adolescents go through?
Well, basically if you think about adolescence, it's like the time when children are going from childhood to adulthood. So there's a lot going on. Cognitively, there's a lot of changes in the brain that happen. One of the things that a lot of parents kind of talk about is that their children sleep a lot more, and that's related to a lot of the brain development that happens during that time. Also during that time, during the time of adolescence, there's a lot of physical changes. You know, girls develop breasts, their hips spread, boys' penises enlarge, their voices get deeper, and in all of this change, there's also their ability to reason and think more adult-like develops. Their emotions during adolescence are kind of going a little bit haywire at times because their levels of hormones are changing, and so their emotions are up. 1 minute they're happy, 1 minute they're sad, 1 minute they're this, 1 minute they're that. Friends become really important during adolescence, and a lot of it is related to this sense of we call egocentrism, which is like the way that we're perceived by others. And so that becomes really important during adolescence. And so kids have this feeling like they're kind of on the stage all the time, and so it's very important to be impressive to other people. And also friendships become important because it's the time when they're working out how relationships are going to look later on in adulthood, both same-sex friendships and relationships as well as opposite-sex or romantic relationships. So those are all the things. There's a lot going on during adolescence.
Definitely,
yeah.
definitely. Alicia, what are some sexual activities that are happening that may shock parents?
Well, I mean, there's numerous ones. One of the more popular ones is something called rainbow parties, and that is when different girls put different colored lipsticks on, and then they perform oral sex on the same guy. At the end of the party, the guy who has the most different colored lipsticks on wins. Another one is this kind of shift, as I said earlier, from that kind of vaginal sex to oral and anal sex. Mm-hmm. People think that it's less risky. It's you know, I can still be called a virgin. Well, when the fact of the matter is that anal sex is the riskiest kind of sex that you can engage in, and you're putting yourself at an increased risk for STIs. Another one is, and this isn't as common in Bermuda, but they're seeing more of it internationally, is group sex. Unfortunately, with this group sex trend, a lot of times there's coercion involved. So it's, you know, kind of forced sex. So, you know, it's something to kind of look out for here as well. Mm-hmm. And then there is the gang issue here. You know, as part of initiation, there is, you know, a point system. Certain girls from certain schools have a different point value associated with them. So if the guy is able to sleep with or have sex with a girl from, say, BHS, he may get this number of points. Whereas if he has sex with a girl from, you know, from Berkeley, you may be able to get this many points. So that's something that's out there too.
Is there an age thing in there as well, or just across the board?
Across the board.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Going back to, you mentioned the rainbow parties.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a particular place that these parties take place at? Is it on the school? Is it that they decide to go somewhere?
Generally speaking, I mean, it's not in school property. There have been instances where people have been caught having oral sex in the bathrooms in schools here for kind of money. But generally, it's at a private residence because it takes some time. They need that amount of time. So unsupervised, time. Got time on my hands, I'm gonna get into trouble.
Right.
Yeah.
With these parties or however these groups occur, how does peer pressure play into, for each of these children that get engaged?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, peer pressure is huge. I think if you're kind of saying, well, no, I don't really want to have sex, but 5 of your friends are all saying, yeah, well, you know what, it's no big deal, come on, what's the big deal? You're giving this guy you're giving this guy a blowjob, or it's no big deal. You're still a virgin. Don't worry about it. I think peer pressure is huge, and one of the important things to be talking to your child about in sex education is how to say no. How to resist peer pressure. How can I still maintain my confidence, everything else, but say no. I'm not ready to engage in this, and I feel confident enough to say no.
When you're in these classes and hearing some of these things, how do you keep from being shocked yourself?
Well, you know what? I think that's my job as a sex educator. I think that sometimes they try to say things that are going to shock me. They try and say things that are going to get a reaction out of me. But in order for me to keep that conversation going, I do have to remain neutral. I do have to remain kind of non-judgmental. So in terms of have they said anything that's really shocked me, honestly, no. So I think that's just kind of part and parcel of the job.
How do you give, or what advice can you give to parents when they end up with shocking news not to overreact?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the last thing that a parent wants to hear is that their young child has engaged in sex. I think more than anything, it is, if you have to take that time out and be like, okay, I need to go and freak out in the bathroom for 10 minutes, let it happen. Then come back, then begin that conversation. Because if you go in and you're angry and you're upset, that the conversation is really over before it starts.
Janaea, before we take our break, what are some of the best times that parents can talk to children about sex?
I think that it just, it really does depend on the relationship you have with your child. But I would say there's never really, a truly bad time to talk with your kids. If there is an opportunity, then you should really take advantage of it. Because kids will get the information somehow, and you want to make sure that they have the best information, because that's kind of like your responsibility as a parent. So I would say there is no bad time. Just take as much advantage of the opportunities that you have as you can.
I want to also thank Southampton Princess for allowing us to film here. And if you are looking for a great place to have brunch, Windows is open on a Sunday. Or if you liked our video, then please subscribe on our website, www.bermudaparentmagazine.com. And this is the Parent Life Show, brought to you by Bermuda Parent Magazine.